Hello. Good afternoon. I saw somebody was waiting. It looks like they left. Starting a couple minutes early just in case there's hiccups. And I should probably get a computer and have it playing to see if anything messes up. But we're just winging it. This is the first live stream. And I guess I'll wait until 3:30 to do much. And I'll cut this out later because I started 5 minutes early. Hello, viewer. I'm getting set up. I am here, I promise. Although I don't have... Thank you, Eric. Just getting things set up since I started a little early. But who knows, you may be the only one here. And so what I'm doing today is finishing up an emerald cut on a synthetic ruby that I've been working my way through. Maybe we need to move a little closer. And I already polished the table because that's usually the most annoying and noisiest part to polish. You can see the glistening off the face there. And for the other viewers at home, I'm cutting the 21st century 10x8 emerald cut by Jim Perkins, which is a freely available design online. And Pavilion has a lot of steps, but it's fairly straightforward. It's mostly just going back and forth between 96 and 48 and 24 and 72 a lot. And the crown is a little trickier just because the angles are shallower, but hasn't been too bad, and I have it all set up to polish. So if this figured I'd try broadcasting with just the polishing stage because there's Lord of the Rings in the background. The polishing stage is a very low speed, slow drip, generally the quietest part of the process of cutting and fashioning gemstones. So I figured I'd be able to either chat with people in the audience or talk about things that are going on. Is there a trick to dealing with something soft like fluorite? Fluorite in particular is tricky because there's 4 planes of cleavage, which are very hard to avoid because if you need to orient the stone in some way. If this was the fluorite and you got, a perfect plane of cleavage here, a perfect here, and there might be one, diagonal and orthogonal to that one. it's hard to orient it where you won't be cutting into the cleavage plane on some of the facets. But with something that's soft, the best you can do is just use a higher grit lap to start. Whereas normally for this one, which is a synthetic ruby, it has a hardness of 9 on the Mohs hardness scale. I usually do a preform and get things shaped with a 100 grit disc, which is even more than some people would use. So I'm working on that little triangle facet there, which is starting to come in already. And unfortunately, at this stage, I use a 10 times jeweler's loop. This is a Belomo triplet, which is a good quality one. It's about $35 or so, I think. But anyway, with fluorite and softer stones, you could probably get away with shaping it with like 1200, maybe a 600 if you wanted to go a little faster if it was a big stone. So that still needs a little bit of work. But you don't want to use too coarse of a stone because then you might, destroy the soft stone way too fast. I hope that answered your question. I'm doing this off camera, aren't I? And what I'm looking for, let's see if we can do this. Should have a little better lighting in here, I suppose. Move that closer. It's harder to get both the light and the stone to cooperate. Because I think I'm my camera may not want to focus on that. Thank you for the like, as we try to figure things out here. There's still a little bit of, what do you call it? It's not orange peel, but there's little spots on here that's subsurface damage that I'm trying to polish out. And so we're working our way through that. Hi, Karen. Thank you for showing up. I'm just polishing an emerald cut ruby. It's a synthetic, but still looks pretty cool, I think. I think it'll be nice and bright. And now that we have a crowd of 2, I think, so what I'm working on is actually going to be a stone that's for sale in my new shop. About a month and a half ago, I incorporated a company. So you're now watching the first broadcast from Donohue Labs. It's not LLC or anything, it's just a sole proprietorship. And I'm going to sell some of the stones that I fashion and some of the ones that I show on YouTube, and some of them I won't show on YouTube just because I can't make a video for every stone. But we're gonna have things for sale. I think that's good. And so right now I'm working at this is 16.42, and when I transferred, I had things misaligned slightly, and so it's supposed to be on 24, but I'm actually on the 23 marker there. And so I just have to subtract 1 from everything to be level and where I want it to be. And what we have next, we go from 24 to 72, or in this case, 71 there. And now we'll polish that. So with polishing, there's a little bit of drag when you first start because it's getting the rough surface, but you can kind of feel it smoothing as you polish. Or if you're in the wrong spot, then it tends to have kind of a squeaky sound to it. And you can see I'm looking for the reflection where these facets down here that I haven't started to polish don't really reflect light the way that the facet that I'm polishing does. And I think I gotta block my hand so it actually shows up properly. But there is a little bit of orange peel on this facet, which is a not uncommon thing with sapphires, where at some of the lower grits, it tends to, I guess, pluck some of the stone out of the sapphire or ruby or corundum, and it leaves a orange peel pattern, which I have on a video somewhere in the past kind of talked about and have some close-up views. But since it's kind of a pain to get out, I think I'll turn this up just a little bit. And normally, if I was doing another softer stone, this would have been polished a long time ago. It's closer now. But because of the orange peel and because corundum has a soft hardness of 9, it takes a long time. And you can see the white on my lap here is actually a lot of diamond that I've put on there. So I overload my polishing wheel with diamond for sapphire just because it's such a pain to polish, for me anyway. And Karen or whoever in the future, if you polish corundum and sapphire, one of the ways to get around that is to skip the 1200 grit step. So I did a lot of my facet forming at 600 grit and then went to 1200 to get rid of those scratches, because I don't have anything between 1200 and my final polishing step, which is 50,000 diamond on this tin lap. But if you had a 3000 or 8000 grit lap, then you could skip those steps. And now I think that facet's good. I know it just looks shiny in the camera to you. But we have our two. So we make kind of a, I don't know what that's, sort of a termination on the end of my table there as the two facets that I've done so far. It goes fairly quick for small facets like that. And now we go to 14.67, which is in the shadows here. And I don't know that there's a way to get it. Maybe turn this off. There. So 14. And then with the handpiece design that I have, the 0 over here is where you line up on the 14. And then it goes from 0 to 1 on the smaller outside region here. And so I go down, so 14, 5, 6, so somewhere between 6 and the 7 mark there. So I'm lined up between these two here, which is kind of tricky to get right the first few times. And this handpiece is those are so fine that approximation is sometimes the best I can do. So now we go back to our diagram, and for 1467, we go to 96 and 48, in this case 97, or 95 and 47. So we'll just go to 95 here. And now we're polishing this face that's lit up, which is kind of the equivalent of that side face that I was doing. It's a little bit bigger, it'll take just a slightly bit longer. And it's at a different angle, so I raise up my platform on this side. You can see, maybe you can see it going up. And I don't have a sturdy table, so it's wobbly. But I just lower it carefully and slowly until I start making contact with the lap. And maybe you can hear that in the video, I'm not sure. But go until I start getting resistance, where right now it's just sitting there, and then we start getting resistance. That's something you don't want to have happen. And there's tons of different ways you could polish. There's all sorts of polishing laps and compounds. When I did the X cubes the other day, those were glass, and I found that cerium oxide on a phenolic lap worked best because I started getting chips when I was using tin for whatever reason. And I gotta move the light so I can see. And that facet's done. So that one went pretty quick. Now we go to the opposite side. Thank you for the congrats, Karen. There's a link, I think, down in the description to go to coffee.com or ko-fi.com/Donohue Labs, which initially was just a donation opportunity for me. So we're done with those. Go to 2972. But on that site now, there's a tab to go to my new shop. 29, what is it? 2972, 2950, 60, 70. And it's not as critical with this to get it exactly right to where I had it before, because the polishing is going to tell you where you need to be. And so I can adjust the angle by raising and lowering the platform here if I don't have the angle quite right. Oh, I should probably make sure we're on the right facet. Yeah, so 2972 is 21, or in this case, 20. So we're polishing, I think that one on the left there. So I almost made a mistake and put the lap down, or put the stone back down where I shouldn't have, which happens. Now, if I can get this to show, I think you can just see on the top right of that facet, it's reflective, but on the bottom, it's still clear. And that's showing me that I need to lower my platform more because I'm polishing the very top of that facet rather than the whole thing. So you can see it kind of playing across the facet like that, but it's only on the top and not the bottom where it goes down to a point at the girdle. And with polishing, I just use a very slow drip of water. Maybe you can't even see that because it's blocking it, but it's forming a drip and dripping now. Every 10 seconds maybe. A relatively low lap speed, and that's how I polish about 80% of the stones that I do. Sometimes if the sapphire gives me trouble, I might speed it up a bit. But that'll get you 80–90% of the way there for most stones the way I do it anyway. This is a tin lap, which to be a proper tin lap has to be, I think, 98% tin or so. And there are some out there that are not that high a percentage, I think. So you do have to be careful. the older the laps, the better they tend to be in terms of tin laps. There's one that my local lapidary club expert uses that's from the 60s or 70s that he's been using, you know, for 50 years. It's still in great working order. It's almost there. Needs a little bit more work. There we go. Baby is awake. So I think that's good for polishing for now. It didn't take that long to do those 4.5 facets. But, and with a tin lap, you don't have to spin it to dry it off. But if you were to use, I have my other laps over here. If you use, you know, sintered or channel laps, you'll need to spin dry those or else they'll get rusty and crap out on you. So I don't have a logo or anything yet, but, and I'm watching a gemstones video. But if you go to coffee.com/Donohue Labs and click on shop here, I've put the X cubes up and some neodymium YAG samples and a couple of the synthetic corundums that I've been working on up there for sale. This one is 29.5 carats. It's huge on the left here. And maybe it would be a good display piece, I suppose. And these X cubes, they all have, you know, carats and sizes in there, and then who designed them. So that was the main news for today. But if we go over to the workstation slash oven, I went back to my club and reloaded on neodymium YAG, so I have some more stones to play with. Turn on light. And some laser ruby. I think I've shown a video of faceting one of those before. But over here, I had to get these at an estate sale when I saw them. These are, it's a box of Schiller Sunstone to play with. Let's see, get a decent size one here. So you can see the color in there. It's got a nice reddish coppery center. So I'm going to learn how to facet Schiller Sunstone. Now it's got some color. This one's some of them aren't that great for faceting, but let's see. I don't know how best to show. There we go. So you can see the play of light across that. That's not a reflection, that's an internal Schiller effect. So I got some of that. And I got a whole bunch of rutilated quartz, which I think is just one of my favorite stones. I like the rutilated quartz and the quartz with tourmalines inside them. I do have some sizes that I'm going to be able to facet. So there's some rutile in there, golden rutile, that I'll be able to try to play with and make an interesting design to highlight them on the inside. And there's a bag of stuff that might be opal. There was definitely one opal piece in there, but I'm dunking the rest of them to see if any color shows up. It might just be potch. I was kind of wondering why they had a random bag of potch. Why would you keep that? I don't know. There might be some other non-faceted items for sale in the shop, and that's one of the reasons I named the shop Donohue Labs rather than, Donohue Gems or Facets by Donohue. This is amber, some dark amber from an unknown location, but I got at an estate sale, I got a whole bag of miscellaneous rocks to play with and maybe provide to some people. These are hematite chunks, enstatite, and there's actually a whole bag of potential star garnets from Idaho, which have plenty of those, I'm sure. Some chrysocolla, I think. And this bag is all sunstone, but I don't think there's any schiller in it, or if there is, it's not very pronounced. So this is more of a practice / small ornament sunstones to work with. And let's see if there's anything else interesting. Karen, if you could remind me, if you're still here, who the channel is that does all the amber stuff, because I do have a couple of large pieces to play with now. These are labeled as amber with termite holes from the Lewiston Rock Shop. And at the time it was $30 for 87 grams back in 1996. I don't know what the price is now. I'll have to do some market research, I suppose. But, there was one interesting piece, actually. There's some... I think that might be chrysocolla. Take all this stuff out. There's a big old bag of turquoise to play with. That's a real thin piece. I've never done anything with turquoise before. I guess cab it up. And somewhere in there was a piece of varicite / turquoise, or varicoise, it was labeled as, which took me a little while to interpret. And these I'm interested to figure out what to do with. These are black star rubies, which are very thin, but have some kind of interesting, not quite schiller effect, but play of brightness across them. Like that's not, it's not polished, I don't think. I think that's broken, and you can see the growth lines in the sapphire in the reflection there. So we're at about 30 minutes, and it's going to take me, I don't know, another 45 minutes to an hour to polish this, so I don't think I'll do that on camera because we have company and a daughter who's going to be noisy. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video, I guess. And if you like this kind of thing, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know if you'd like me to do any more live videos or other demonstrations and things like that. I'm willing to do it. I just gotta figure out how to do it a little better than just this one camera, I think. So thanks again, and see you around. Bye-bye.